Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are the Batman. I'm Mike.
And this is Matthew.
And today we're doing another comic book review. This one is about the graphic novel Batman Arkham Asylum, which was recommended to me by Matt, which I have read, and we're going to talk about now. Before we get into my thoughts, since it was recommended by you, let's like what are your thoughts? What's your background with this comic book?
I actually read this comic when it was first released, and I remember it's kind of funny. The first time I read it, I hated it because I thought there was going to be a lot more psychological into who Batman was, and I felt like originally I was like, it's not delivering. I don't understand, and it wasn't until like 2 or 3 years later I reread it because I bought the graphic novel. This was one of those rare things where it was not episodic. You just bought the graphic novel. And I think like 2 or 3 years go by and I read it again. And I'm like, okay, now I'm there. Now I'm getting, and I don't know if I was just too young when I first read it. And every time I've read it, I've picked up something more and more every single time. But it's also one of those weird ones where you get more out of it if you read everything. And like, because there's a little like intros of each character. If you read those, that stuff reflects in the story. And I just thought, like, the more I've read it, the more I've gotten out of it and the more I've enjoyed it. And I think it is definitely one of those that now that the video game came out and you go, hey, have you read Arkham? Like, yeah, I read that comic. Like, no, not the video game comics, the graphic novel from the 90s. I really feel like it's one of those random things like The Cult, where it's just kind of disappeared in time and nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah, because I remember hearing about this comic when the game first came out, and they were like, "Oh, it's loosely or roughly based on the graphic novel," and never got around to reading it. And you recommended it to me, and I've read it 3 times now since I got it, just to really wanted to read it and absorb it. And it's funny that you said how the first time you read it you hated it, because I've read it 3 times and I still hate it. I still hate it. I even read it again. Like the 3rd time I read it was today. I read it this morning just before, because I knew we were doing this, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I love Grant Morrison. I want to be really clear. I love Grant Morrison. There is just this book takes so many swings, and for me, none of them really land. I think it's a lot of interesting ideas, none of which really seem to go anywhere.
It's a weird thing because it's also one of those, this is, I think, a time capsule. There's a lot of things that are done here that affect the characters afterwards in the comics and the stories, that now when you read it, you're kind of like, well, yeah, okay. Yeah, of course that. Or, but it is also, it's just a weird, demented storyline that really isn't about Batman.
It's not really about anything. I even have a hard time calling this a storyline, because stories have a beginning, middle, and end. There's a rising and falling action. There's a plot and a theme, and there's really none of that here. It's kind of a mess. Like, I do not care for the art at all. I think the artwork just comes across as ridiculously, I mean, the book in general does, but the art especially comes across as really pretentious. Like this was someone going from being an artist to trying to be an artiste. And I didn't love it. The way that it was also just really hard to read, because it took me forever to read what Joker was saying.
Yes.
The weird stylized dialogue they did with him was really hard to read. I didn't know what he was saying half the time. I had to go back and reread it. And then also just the writing itself was just bad. Like the things Batman and Joker say, like the actual words, are just dumb half the time. Like they're dumb and like literally the first time we see Batman, he's going to the bat signal to meet with Commissioner Gordon, and I swear to God, Batman says, "What's up?"
Yes, that has always been the weirdest thing to me, because I can remember when I read, because it's kind of, not trying to play the age game per se, but like,
Yeah.
"What's up" was not what it is now. Even now, it's not exactly. But like, "What's up?" You did like that was kids said that. So when Batman shows up, it's like, "What's up?" And I'm just like, did they slap five first? Like, it was really kind of weird.
Did you give him a head nod and say the head nod and say "Sup, homie"? Like what? It not only, but just like, and also the way Joker was talking to Batman, he keeps calling him babe and sweetheart and honey, and at one point just grabs his ass.
Yeah,
and I was like, what? Who wrote this? I know it says Grant Morrison, but I'm like, no, seriously, who wrote this? This feels like a 12-year-old wrote this. Like a 12-year-old edgelord wrote this.
It's a weird story in that, like, I like it, but I'm not going to defend the flaws that you're pointing out. Like, it does have some weird moments, but I think that the overall kind of oddity of dropping Batman into Arkham and him fighting his way out and then realizing, like, yeah, it was for nothing. Like, nothing. The thing that did change, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
But
like, even to say that he has to fight his way out is kind of disingenuous, because like he fights Croc once. I think it's Croc. I don't know. It's hard to tell with this artwork. But he, I guess, fights Croc, and that's the only fight he has. Like at one point he goes up against, I forget who it is, but they're in a wheelchair.
That's and he just Maxie Zeus.
No, it wasn't Zeus. It was somebody else. It was like Dr. something. But he just pushes the wheelchair down the stairs and walks away. Like that's it. They keep name dropping Clayface left and right. He never shows up. And then at one point, Mad Hatter's just there and recites a poem, and it's like Batman is just walking around, just going, "Man, this place is weird. This is weird. You know what? I'm just gonna leave," because he just leaves. He just walks out.
Well, he gets out and then he goes back in.
Yeah,
he jumps out the window, gets out, then goes back in because he thinks he has to save the girl.
And then you get into a moment that I don't understand at all, which is she just straight up murks this guy like in front of him, and Batman just goes, it needed to be done. Yeah, he got what he deserved. Yep. What? That's what they did in Justice League, the animated series, when it was the alternate universe Batman that was okay with killing. Like that was what he said when Superman murked Lex Luthor. Batman sits there because he on the same page he goes, "No, don't do it." It needed to happen. Like it, and then he just walks out of the asylum. He just walks out, and Joker's like, "Okay, I'll come back now. You hear?" He tells him like, "Oh, you've got 1 hour, and then we're all coming after you." And then is like, you know what? We'll pretend it's an hour. Everybody go after him. Well, nothing happens.
Yeah, 3 people went after him.
And honestly, only one of them actually did anything. Other than that, at one point we see Scarecrow like walking around dragging his pitchfork. Never see him again. It's never mentioned again. I don't understand. This was such a pointless. I know you said that like grand scheme of things after this has repercussions. Sure. But as a standalone book, I hate this. It's nothing happens. Nothing. So we also get some like backstory flashback stuff with Amadeus Arkham. That was more interesting than anything else happening with Batman in this comic. That should have just been the comic. It should have just been the Amadeus Arkham stuff. That was interesting. Things happened in that story. Nothing else happens with Batman. Nothing happens with Batman in the story at all.
Yeah, I like it, but again, like, yeah, you're right. There's some of it where you're just like, okay, I guess that's how that would work. There's like the one that always sticks out to me. There's 2 moments in this thing that stick out to me a lot. And the one is when Batman pushes the glass through his hand.
Yeah, what was that about?
That is, I've wondered about that for years, and then realized like that is because what it harkens back to, because I saw it differently, is Blade Runner. There's a moment in Blade Runner where Roy Batty shoves a nail through his hand, and
Right. I know what
it's
you're talking about.
my kind of weird takeaway or understanding of it is like, if you feel like you're not right in the head and you're like losing focus and everything, you just give yourself intense pain and it helps you refocus back to what you're supposed to be doing. So because he's kind of not sure what's happening, his psyche's been quote unquote broken, he shoves the glass through his hand so that he can refocus.
I get where that's coming from, but it happens so early, like before anything's really happened, that it doesn't quite make sense.
It's a there's a I think there needed to be two more moments where you see the psychiatrist breaking him
Yeah.
for it to have more weight, because it like he plays the word association game with her and then that's it. Suddenly he's broken.
Which also came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because at first it's just her showing him what they've been doing to Harvey Dent, which is nothing short of psychological torture. And then it cuts away to a flashback and it cuts back and they're doing word association. I was like, wait, I had to flip back. I was like, did I miss a page or something? Like, how did we get here? And then it's just over. It's over as soon as as quickly as it starts.
Yeah. And this is where I would love to see this acted. It's hard to pull this kind of stuff off on the page, especially when you have weird art.
Yeah. No, yeah. You know what a lot of this reminds me of? A lot of this reminds me of like if this had been a fan film someone made on YouTube. Like just a like a proof of concept, obscure auteurist kind of like, let me just do this little short indie film with Batman going through the asylum and seeing some weird acid trippy shit. That's what it felt like to me. It didn't feel like a cohesive and coming from someone like Grant Morrison also, like, man, I expect better. I expect better from Grant Morrison, man.
Well, and this also comes from a time when there's a lot of these weird, like, people are experimenting with art, because this is the first time, if memory serves, that somebody painted a comic book that way. And I don't mean like in that style. I mean just painted a comic. Like this is before Alex Ross hits the scene. Yeah. So nobody had done that before, because there was like 3 or 4 different. There was one where it was like like the first computer generated comic, where they did all the, everything was done in a computer, and it's weird as hell too. It's like a future Batman. I can't remember what the hell it was called. So I think that there's like a weird experimental thing to this, that they're hoping that what you're saying, that auteur kind of, how am I going to interpret this, is going to come about. But you are having all the reactions I had the first time I read it.
And you know why it bums me out so much is because one of my favorite JLA runs was written by Grant Morrison, and that's the New World Order, which was his run in '97.
Which is like
one of my
almost 10 years after this.
Yeah, I know. But it's just one of those. It's like, man, like JLA New World Order is so good. It's such a good run, dealing with like the Martians coming down and that whole, like, addressing the idea of like, does the Justice League actually work, or like the idea of giving everybody what they want, rather than what they need. It's such a good run. His run on Hellblazer was fantastic. It's just, it's Grant Morrison. I mean, this guy has won so many freaking awards for comic book writing. It's ridiculous. And so I think that's why I'm just kind of like, man, he's done better. Yeah, he has done so much better.
It's early on Grant Morrison, that's for sure.
Yeah. But like, because like his, like you can definitely tell. You can definitely tell this is early on. He hadn't quite figured out what he wanted to do yet, because like his run with like when he did in 2000, I think it was 2000 and 2007, 2008, he does the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, which is a run on Batman, which is fantastic. He did the Batman RIP run, which I think was 2010, 2009, 2010. I'm always off by a year. It's just, so yeah, I think that's part of why, because I'm coming to this A, out of order, and B, many years removed, but just a lot of what I'm not picking up what they're putting down. And it's so crazy to me that they're saying that this was the inspiration for the Arkham Asylum video game, because while I can for sure draw parallels in terms of like the broad stroke story of everything, it's definitely like, when they say it's loosely based, like emphasis on the loosely.
Yeah. It's the name. It's that he goes into Arkham. Yeah. That's about it.
That's pretty. There's, like I said, there's very subtle, broad stroke lines you can draw, but for the most part, they have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. See, now I need to come. We need to revisit this a year from now if you actually read it again and see.
We'll see. I mean, I'm always down for giving something a second chance, or in my case, like a fourth or fifth chance. But yeah, we'll see. Because it took me about look, like full disclosure, it took me a full year to understand Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So, we'll see. But
the comic or the movie?
Yes. So okay. as it stands, the movie, the comic book, once I read the comic, I got the movie. But as it stands, yeah, Batman Arkham Asylum. Yeah, I'm good. I've read worse. Don't get me wrong. I've read worse. I have read better. This is definitely leaning towards the bottom of the barrel for me in terms of like just not enjoying it. But yeah, it is what it is.
Well, everybody, let us know what you think. Have you read Arkham Asylum? Do you like it? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Is the art way weird? Are you more along me of like read it 80 times and maybe it'll hit you? Or are you more like Mike and like, screw this, I'm not going back again?
80th time's a charm, I guess. Let us know. But yeah, let us know on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mike Shea.
And you can find me at Mr. J Ninja.
And until next time, guys, we'll be back with another episode. Same bat time, same bat podcast channel.
Check you next time.
Later.